Welcome back. You're watching Rise and Shine. A very good morning to you if you happen to just tune in. It's the 25th of May, and as promised, we do have our guest in the studio, former Sri Lankan ambassador to Norway and Director General of Sri Lanka Tourism Board. He is currently the General Manager of Sri Lanka Convention Bureau and also visiting lecturer in tourism, marketing and event management as well as Buddhist studies. Good morning to you, Mr. Vipula Wanigasekera.
Good morning.
Good morning to you, sir. Going into the main topic that we were talking about Vesak yesterday as well, and when it comes to the core thing that Lord Buddha spoke about, the middle path, what it does actually mean to the public, because now we see a lot of people actually deviating from all that and under tremendous stress when it comes to personal issues, family issues, financial issues, and all sorts of things that happen in and around the world. But there is a way out of all this. It's just that people have deviated so much. What did Lord Buddha teach the general public?
I think you just explained very briefly the core message of the Buddha. Now, there are several versions. Some people call it path to freedom or liberation, or ways and means of getting out of this sansaric journey, because you die, you get born. And I think it is appropriate and probably safe to quote what the Buddha himself has said. And he said, I teach only one thing, and that is suffering and end of suffering. This is a quote of the Buddha. Now, the word suffering in English, I don't think it embraces or encompasses the true meaning of dukkha, because dukkha is the real word in Pali. Now, dukkha has a wider meaning. It covers the stress, anxiety, depression, anger, hatred, all that, you know. Now, when you say suffering, your life is driven by desires. And although sometimes you don't admit, the suffering follows all the time. So here is a way that the Buddha has shown to bring the suffering to an end, and then you are free. So that is very simply what the Buddha has explained. Now, one needs to find out the causes for suffering. On the one hand, you have inevitable events or happenings in life. Like you are subject to old age, sicknesses, illnesses, and finally you reach inevitable death. Now, all these things cause suffering, and no one can challenge that. And thereafter you have the desires, various types of desires that cause suffering. And one is called kama tanha, that is the desires arising from the five senses. When one desire is fulfilled, another arises. So you go on, you know, trying to fulfill this. Then there is, it's obvious, you know, when it comes to desires arising from five senses. Then you have the bhavatanha, which is the desire for existence. Let me explain now. Bhavatanha means that your desire to maintain the status quo or to enhance your belongings, your position, you know, whatever. So, you know, the fear, the anxiety, and all that, you know, will I lose what I have tomorrow, or how will I get this tomorrow? So this is existence. All this is covered by existence. So there is bhavatanha, which causes suffering. And the third one is vibhavatanha, which is also in Pali. This is your desire to detach, your desire to reject. You know, if you don't like some people, you prefer to be away from them. You know, if you don't like certain situations, you don't want to be there. And this is also a desire, because you go through suffering again. So the suffering, the word suffering should not be taken with a negative connotation. It's a fact in life. So if you have understood that there is suffering, that itself becomes a driving force or something that will urge you to find a status in life where there is no suffering. So very simply, that is the message of Buddha.
And many people do say that it's a little hard to actually follow the path. And is it true?
Well, I would say it's yes and no. Now, it is difficult, yes, because, for instance, there is a whole lot of literature. Now, during Buddha's time, nothing was written. And subsequently, the Buddhist monks who remembered the discourses, they started writing these down. Now, there are sutras, what we call discourses, preached by Buddha, and there are 22,000 of them. And at the same time, there's Abhidhamma, which deals with mind and matter. The analysis, it goes on and on. So, if one were to think that you have to acquire all these knowledge, just certainly it's going to be difficult. Then you have this detachment, there is a perception that, if you have to follow Buddhism, if you have to practice Buddhism, you have to start detaching from all these material gains, which is not really true, because you detach from your thought. If you want to have a good meal, you have the meal, but don't have an attachment to that afterwards. This is how it is dealt. And also, like meditation is said to be heart of Buddhism. As you know, a lot of people are taken to meditation now, and it is also not easy, because you have the meditation on tranquility, to hold the mind, which is almost impossible, and then you have insight meditation to think of the realities. So if you look at all these things, one tends to think it's a kind of a mission impossible. But at the same time, it cannot be so, because now Buddha has gone through all that. Okay, leaving aside his sansaric journey, but he renunciated his family, the palace, all that, and then he went from one teacher to another, and then tried out all the methods that were being practiced at that time, and even self-mortification, without having any food, and he did all that and discovered. And then after this discovery, he was actually wondering, okay, will there be people to understand this reality? And he was kind of discouraged initially, but subsequently he went in search of people who were looking for this, and subsequently thousands and thousands of people were embracing this philosophy and enjoying this freedom. So therefore, to that extent, you cannot say it is difficult. Now, some of the discourses are just few lines. Now, in one instance, he said to one of the disciples, he kept on asking Buddha, what do I have to do? And he said, well, if you have seen something, you have only seen that. If you have heard something, you have only heard. If you have felt, you have only felt. Don't create concept, stories, don't try to compare. It is subtle, you need to, go on thinking about this and, make this self-inquiry to ascertain what he meant. So therefore, I also personally think that it's not something that is impossible. Otherwise, thousands of, the people wouldn't have attained enlightenment with Buddha's help.
And very true, Mr. Wanigasekera. And what you mentioned, something important, is that when it comes to certain things in life, as Lord Buddha very clearly said, if you have heard something, it's only that you have heard, and if you have seen something, it's only that you have seen, and if you have felt it, that you have felt it. It's just that when it comes to the general public right now, when you hear something, you basically develop a whole story on it. Absolutely. And then go around talking about it, and that's probably one reason why we have deviated a lot from what Lord Buddha actually taught us.
Yes, now that is why he said that, this Dhamma that I'm teaching you is a raft which helps you to get across the river, but don't carry it afterwards, So, what you meant was that, you have probably seen that, excessive indulgence in, it is really not necessary. You don't need knowledge to understand Buddhism, you need wisdom. So that's the difference. So just because you are qualified in something doesn't mean that you are suitable to, that doesn't work that way.
And when it comes to day-to-day life, what we see right now, a lot of people are involved in so much that they don't pay enough attention to what they actually should. When it comes to even their own kids, there's no much of time that they spend with their kids, because they are bogged down with so much of work and so much of other things that they are involved in, and they lose the attention that they should be actually giving to their parents as well as their kids. Why is this right now?
That is the social trend and the social pressure, I guess. Now that you mentioned this, let me tell you now, most of the parents are very keen to ensure that they make their children professionals. I mean, it's understandable. But if you are doing it with a sincere intention to get them to serve the people, for example, you be a professional, but at least ensure that the people are benefiting from your skills. Or is the hidden motive to ensure that your children elevate to a particular position and therefore you are respected, then there's a problem. And that is what causes this stress and anxiety, and the parents are going through a lot of issues. And look at the competition, and but they have to go on. Probably, you don't see this in certain other countries. So therefore, we have a great opportunity to share this Dhamma with, now, if you look at the international trend, there are many spiritual leaders who are, if you go to YouTube, you can find people like Eckhart Tolle, Bert Harding, Mooji, Adyashanti, Peter Russell, Deepak Chopra, all these people, they are in fact conveying Buddha's message. It's just that they don't carry the label. Obviously, from time to time they give a tribute to Buddha, and they admit the fact that Buddha is one of the first to discover this. So they are relating it, and the people are benefiting from it. And I think we have preserved this Theravada Buddhism. We are in a better position to spread this out.
And looking at what you mentioned, sir, very clearly about the competition that is in right now, and even yesterday we mentioned this, that kids of maybe 6-7 years old are actually competing to do well at the scholarship exams, which comes in grade 5, and they basically lose their childhood purely because they have been rushed to tuition classes as soon as school is over, and probably spend 4-5 hours in tuition classes just for the sake of getting good marks at the scholarship exam. And this is done by parents basically forcing the kids to study, and they lose out on enjoying their childhood. And
the danger is that, let's say you want your child to be a doctor, and he has to score a certain
number of marks. Yeah.
And after, now I have come across a number of families, they have done so well in their O levels, and then they crash and they never get a chance to enter the university. No, the parents have money to send them abroad. So just imagine the agony that the child will go through afterwards, because they have exerted so much pressure and given them so much hopes, and it is taking the childhood and the lives probably away from them, which should not be the case.
What do you suggest should be done with regards to this?
Well, you see, the point is that, as I said before, this Buddhism is perceived by many people as something that well, you see, I will get on with my normal life and then think about it later on, kind of. It's in you. The discovery has to be made now, because yesterday and tomorrow are illusions. All you have got is the present moment, and what you are supposed to do is to look inside. The truth is not out there. I think the other day, when I was interviewed just before the doomsday, I was saying this, that the whole world is in your mind. It's like, if you look at a mirror, for example, it's a three-dimensional effect. You can see what is behind you through the mirror. Now the mirror is deceiving you actually, because it has just a flat surface. Mm-hmm. It can't show you possibly anything three-dimensional. So you see how the illusion works. The mind does the same, but and you are driven by the mind. So if you can identify that, well, it doesn't mean that you will plan for tomorrow. You will study for an exam, but you do it now. But you are not living in that moment. Eventually, when you get through the exam, it will happen in the now of tomorrow.
That's
put it
true.
this way.
So you basically have to live the moment.
Well, but then it will give a wrong impression that it's you. But the fact remains that you know, we can challenge anyone with this. All you have is the present moment.
Exactly.
Yes, very true.
And if you look at this, this book, The Power of Now, written by Tolle, and basically this is what the Buddha said. Buddha himself said, you know, don't live in the past, don't live in the future, all you have is the present moment. And he wrote about it, and 6 million copies of that book, and it is in the opera, you know, the book club, whatever. And today he's a known spiritual teacher.
And especially so when it comes to life, and what we have seen is that you can't blame the parents as much, because they are keen in making sure that their kids have a proper education, or probably, as you clearly mentioned, probably get to a different level compared to what they are in, and probably because of the competition of the neighborhood or their parents or family or things like that, that they push their kids too much. When it comes to not just education, for that matter, sports or relationships or everything else that is in life, is this a lot to do with the cosmetic world, or is it the pressures of the society? Why is it happening?
I think it's something to do with ego. When you say ego, it's not the usual ego. I mean, we might say here that guy has got ego. That's not what I'm referring to. Ego is really what you are not. All what you have acquired artificially, including your name, including your designation, including your family relation, these are all what you have acquired after you were born. Otherwise, you are just a human being. So that's why they say we all are one. If you drop egos of all the people, we are just one. We can't be different. We are different because there is this egoic factor working in us. So that is what drives, you know, all these families. You know, we have to be better, and we have to do this, and finally, what do you get? You know, at the end, you know, you are subject to what I said at the beginning, which leads to suffering.
Even in Buddhism, it says that you should actually get rid of ego in yourself. So how can this be practiced by the people in their day-to-day life?
Well, you know, dropping the ego, you know, some people are saying, it's like this. Now say, you love your parents. And if I ask you, do you love the parents of others? Obviously you will say no. The question is, the answer is there. All you have to do is to just look at it and discover this. You know, if I can extend the same love to the other parent, you have done the trick. You know, it's simple as that. What is the difficulty? Difficulty is the attachment.
Yes.
Similarly, you know, if someone that you know of falls ill, you know, you might go to hospital and you will be sorry. But you might not look at the other patients around and with the same feeling. Why? Because, you know, you are attached here. But you should have the same sympathy. And how do you generate that? It comes from the heart. So that's why we say there's a language of heart which cannot be written down. So the language of the heart is what the Buddha has preached. You need to understand, but you cannot express that in words.
And Mr. Wanigasekera, can you please describe us about the samsaric journey and about the enlightenment, which is actually mentioned in Buddhism?
Well, you know, samsaric journey is explained. Some scholars say that it's reincarnation, or they call it rebirth. I don't think these words are doing the justice to. I think really it's re-becoming. So you are neither the same person nor a different person, you know, when you travel. In Pali you call it nachaso, nachan, and so on. What happens is that your body is innocent. The mind drives, you know, whatever your body has to do. And eventually it reaches the inevitable death. Now, what is mind? Mind is a conglomeration or stream of thoughts. It's like a film, you know, if you remember those days, if you go to a cinema hall, there's a cabin and you see this, you know, the long film and which slides. And when the film is run, then the story starts. So life is also like that. So these thoughts have full of unfulfilled desires. So in other words, there is unfinished business. So when there are unfulfilled desires, they have to be fulfilled. So when your body is no longer capable of holding it, then of course it has to go into another form which is the most suitable form for the characteristics of those thoughts at the time of your death. So it could be a human, it could be an animal, that's based on the Buddhistic theory. So that's how you travel in this samsaric journey.
And about enlightenment?
Well, enlightenment, once again, there is a misperception. You know, some feel that enlightenment is that you are getting yourself elevated to a position which is somewhat superior to, you know, a human being. You know, that kind of a understanding. At the same time, there's another misperception that some people think enlightenment is that you are completely detached and you isolate yourself and go into a forest or something and you are happy, you know, kind of that kind of understanding. It is neither of these two. Enlightenment is very simply, according to the Buddhist scriptures, it says that it is the realization that there is no sufferer, there is only suffering, and there is no thinker, it's only thinking, and there's no experiencer, it's only the experience, which is very, very subtle, but you need to see, you need to find out who you are. So you keep this alertness, self-inquiry all the time. If you have this alertness, you can actually sometimes laugh at yourself, because the things that you say, the things that you want to do, particularly this egoic thing, you know, sometimes people drop names, you know, it's all ego, you know, you speak of someone and, you know, and you speak only about the relations who are doing well, but you don't speak about the people who are not doing well. It's all, you know, so, but if you are alert and if you know exactly, it's like a, you know, you come out of yourself and look at yourself. This is the self-inquiry. If you do that, there will be lot of discoveries.
It's like coming out of the box.
Absolutely. So that is why, you know, in management you say, you know, think differently, think opposite and think out of the box. This is exactly what is taught in Buddhism.
And Mr. Wanigasekera, as you clearly mentioned now, the whole theory is about actually realizing the body and soul are two different things, and probably finding the control over your soul as well as your body, because your mind controls your body, but you need to know, and when it comes to day-to-day activities, people do what they just think, and when it comes to society, what the society forces you to do, instead of actually doing what you want to do in life, especially when it comes to things like going to work, doing the job that you want. Probably when it comes to education, the A-level stream that you choose probably is forced upon you by your parents or the family or friends, probably because of your friends. Maybe that you don't want to do mathematics, but it's just because your parents want you to become an engineer, or because they want you to become a doctor, you follow biology. So it's not that you have control over yourself. What do people do to take control over themselves?
I think that is a kind of a sad situation, really. If you, what you are good at, you know, there are, you know, sometimes you have this whom we call black sheeps in the family. How you know, good families, and how can you, you know, this person is so incorrigible, and, you know, these are all practices, as I told you, that you are carrying forward. At the same time, you find, you know, in certain poor families, you find some people are genius in doing certain things. You know, I saw the other day on the Facebook, you know, that small child is reading all the capitals in the world. And how can, I probably 1.5 or 2 years or something, she can hardly speak, you know. And she's, you know, where are you carrying it? Because, you know, you have certain skills. So those are the ones that should be nurtured. And look at our situation, because now those who are, with due respect to our education, but those are who are coming out of the universities, and it's very difficult to find jobs because they are not trained to meet the job market. You know, so all the efforts, you know, other than doctors and engineers, all the efforts given by the parents, it's just sometimes it's down the drain. You know, the children have to do various other things finally.
The main thing is to identify your talent, what you are really capable of.
Exactly. So the parents have to watch the child and allow him to do what he's good at. And today I can tell you, everything is, there is a professionalism, no. Even a painter, even a mechanic, you know, today, you know, in other part of the world, they are doing so well. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you are a professional in that. You do it professionally. So that is what has to be advocated.
And when it comes to life, sir, now, as you clearly mentioned, when it comes to other countries now, here in Sri Lanka, it's about education. You go to school, that's not the education. It's beyond 1:30 or 2, the tuition is the education now here in Sri Lanka. When it comes to day-to-day activities, health means you have to be in the hospital, you have to go see the doctor. It has changed somewhat from what we have heard from our grandparents, because if you go abroad, you'll probably realize there are no tuition classes as such, hardly any.
Yes.
And when it comes to hospitals, hardly any hospital that probably accommodate maybe 30 or 40 patients. Here in Sri Lanka, it's about 1,000, maybe 1,200, and every day you see the hospitals are developing and probably putting up more stories to accommodate more patients. It's just that we have deviated so much from what we actually should be doing. Why is this? Lord Buddha taught us a middle path where you should not get into extremes. But when it comes to our social life, it's all to do with extremes. Why have we deviated so much?
I think once again it is the social pressure, and you know, I don't have to carry the label of being a Buddhist. So long as you know what the Buddha has said, then you follow and you do what is right. And what has happened is that there is a kind of hypocrisy, you know. You say one thing and you do something else, and the children they learn from the parents first. So you know, if they look at these attitudes, they also tend to acquire these. So therefore, it's very necessary that what shall I say? It's you live in reality. I think that is very simply, you know, what is real is the fact. You cannot deviate. You cannot deviate from that.
You should understand what's in store for you and what you're going to face, and face it, face the reality. And as a final, Mr. Wanigasekera, can you please suggest a few steps to be taken in order to follow the middle path for our people out there who's facing a lot of anxiety and depression? How can they actually put it into action?
Let me put it this way. As I said before, the language is not strong enough. It's like, you know, you go to a doctor, if you have a sickness, he'll give you a medicine and you are okay. It doesn't work like that when it comes to this philosophy. The language is poor to explain the nature of suffering and the enlightenment, because as I said before, it's the language of the heart. Now, all you can do is you can give a few pointers or what we call clues, because you yourself have to find this, because in Buddhism you are your own master. So what happens is, like few things that I said, we all are one. You know, it has a huge scope of an array of things that you can think about afterward when you say we are one, and how can that be? So if you go on that, you know, you will probably or live in the present moment. You know, that's another one, another clue, you know, with which you can, you know, carry on. And there is also like drop the ego, and this will make a huge change, and a very small thing. And there were instances, sometimes Buddha meets people and he preaches only a few words, and that is good enough for them, because you do your own analysis and you realize, you discover, and then you are happy. The point is, the happiness is not the answer to suffering, because pain and pleasure are two sides of the coin. A lot of people think that the pleasure is the answer to suffering. The answer to suffering is cessation of suffering.
Understanding that is, I think, probably what people need to do, because when it comes to life, they think if you are happy, that means you're away from all the suffering. It's not the case, because when it comes to life, you have so much that you look forward to. Even though you are probably well to do with, maybe even if you have all the riches that you have, you will have some kind of suffering. Maybe it's to do with your kids and education, or maybe family or things like that. There's always that. And I think we have come to the end of the show, so unfortunately the time has caught up with us. We need to thank Mr. Vipula Wanigasekera most especially, because he's straight down from Frankfurt, from the airport. Instead of collecting his luggage, he has rushed to the studios to be here, and that's, I